Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Celebration of Knowledge. This time, integration management. This is what you do. This is who you are. If you look right now on the PMBOK guide, page 25, you look at the chart on the left-hand side. It has the knowledge areas. Look at the very first knowledge area in the top left. It's integration management. This is what you do for a living. This is, if you look across the horizontal, those are the processes that you use to manage all of the processes in project management and to make it happen. This is you. So that's exciting. Let's get started then. This is the objective slide that I have every time. What I like to remind people to do is that when you've been through the lesson, done the readings, studied the material, you ought to, when you think, am I ready for the exam? Come back to this slide. You ought to be able to read it and have a mental conversation on every one of these topics on this slide. That's a good test. Now, this slide you've seen before. I love it because it shows all the processes wrapped up together and how they relate to each other. Remember, you are in the brown, so you are managing the processes in, for example, initiating using 4.1, developed project charter. You're managing all of the planning processes by using process 4.2, develop project management plan. You're managing execution by the processes 4.3 and 4.4, etc. Now, this lesson is on integration management. And those are the yellow boxes, right? So with integration, that's scope rather, integration management, that is the brown ones, as I was saying. So in monitoring and controlling, it's 4.5 and 4.6. One is an actual controlling process, and that's monitor and control. That's all about measure, looking for variances, and if there are variances, recommending changes, because every change, no matter where it comes from, goes to 4.6, perform integrated change control. And your last process, 4.7, close project or phase. So that's kind of how they all tie together. Now, this is an overview slide, and I know the yellow might seem like a lot, but it's meant to focus you in. So down the left, we have our process groups: initiating, planning, executing, controlling, and closing. You know, I've said before, I often abbreviate monitoring and controlling, which is the official term, for just the term controlling. In fact, we call it IPEC in short, right? So the initiating is all about what you're doing is creating a charter that formally authorizes the project and allows the project managers to use resources. Those 2 points are absolutely essential. And then from there, you're going to go on to identify all the stakeholders. In planning, you are looking to integrate all of the subsidiary plans. So the scope management plan, the cost management plan, the schedule management plan, the risk management plan, etc., etc. All the management plans you are looking to integrate. They have to match. I can't have more schedule than I have budget to cover it. I can't have more requirements in scope than I have quality to test it, right? And this is what we're doing. Then in the executing, the main project process is direct and manage project work. Bam! This is where the work gets done. This is where you're building that deliverable, that output that you have to come up with in predictive or waterfall project management. This is where you collect work performance data. And if I ever have a change approved, bam, it goes back into this process, and that's how you integrate it into your project. Now, the other process in executing process group is to manage project knowledge. So bam, we as project managers are the nexus of all knowledge. And as we get it, we can't keep it to ourselves. Hide it under a bushel. No, right? Let it shine. So get that information out to others. Share knowledge. Share lessons learned, etc. We'll talk about that in detail. Then monitoring and controlling also has two processes. The first one is just monitor and control project work. So notice it's a process group, monitoring and controlling, and it's a process called monitor and control project work. Sometimes they say monitor, sometimes they say control, but make no mistake, it's always about control, right? We want to track and control the baselines, the other metrics, and we want to compare the plan, which we did up in green just above us on the left, green planning. We want to compare the project management plan to our actual results in executing indirect and managed project work. That's what we're doing in monitoring and controlling. Notice I'm comparing the plan in green on the left to the executing direct and managed project work. Those two processes get compared constantly in monitoring and controlling. Then I have, if there are change requests, perform integrated change control. I'll abbreviate that ICC, integrated change control. I get a change request. This board will approve or deny it, maybe delay it. If it's either way, I'm going to communicate it to the stakeholders. And then, of course, closing. I'll not only close the project at the end, but I'll close at the end of each phase. As we've looked at that before, one of the items you do is you have a phase gate check, at the end of each phase. And that's part of closing, okay? So integration management, bam, this is what you do, your primary role. Of course, you'll spend most of your life communicating, 90% of what you do, but you are communicating the knowledge and the information and the activities going on in these process groups through your processes, okay? Now, the charter is the first process you have, page 25, top left, develop project charter. This is where a project starts. This is where the project manager is formally assigned normally. And this has two key aspects. It formally authorizes, recognizes the project, which authorizes you, the PM, to use resources. What you're doing, if you look on the right, is you're aligning those high-level documents, the business documents, with now you're refining it, you're narrowing it a little bit to more, to the kind of requirements that you will develop. Now, a charter is always high level, okay? Now, in predictive project management, it is generally performed only once. In Agile, you will do this at predetermined times. You'll actually develop charters along the way, okay? We have our inputs, tools, and techniques and outputs like we do any process. Our inputs, notice our business documents. Those are what we got from the C-suite. Remember, if we could have been in the meeting, would have been great. We hope we get invited, but if not, ask for them. Any agreements also that have been created, that could be a formal contract or some sort of service level agreement, things like that. And EEFs and OPAs always. Tools and techniques are listed there. Expert judgment and meetings are separate tools. I just put them on the same line. Data gathering includes brainstorming and interviews. I'm always interviewing key stakeholders. And then I do interpersonal and team skills. That gets used because we're managing conflict and facilitating meetings, etc. Now my output, bam, has two. There are two outputs to develop project charter. One, is the charter itself. That makes sense. And in the predictive approach, the charter is probably not going to change. As I mentioned, in the agile approach, the charter is tailored and updated as you go along. Now, the other, and the charter is always high level. And remember these two things, it all formally recognizes your project because it's signed by the sponsor or sponsors, and it gives you the authority then to use resources. Now, the other big output of this process is the assumptions log, which has, by the way, assumptions and constraints. Here is a look at a charter for predictive. You could use it for Agile too. You'll just update it more often. I highlighted some things in red, but those are just my highlights, right? You didn't have to. You could add other things to the charter, but it's always high level. Remember, if I'm building a bridge between San Francisco and the other land on the other side of the bay, I'll say it'll be 8 lanes. It'll be a bike lane also each way, a pedestrian lane, right? Those are high level. They're still measurable requirements, but high level, okay? So there's some notes there about predictive and agile projects, okay? Make sure you note those in your study, as that's now a new emphasis on the exam. Now, the next process is called Develop Project Management Plan. And like Ohio State, which is known as the Ohio State, this is the project management plan where everything you're doing gets rolled up inside of this project management plan. It's that important. So I'll skip right to the outputs. It has all my subsidiary plans, which are my management plans. It has my baselines. It'll have milestones, and etc. Now let's go back to the top and just take a quick look at it. The project management plan is how I'm going to manage, execute, and control the project. In fact, every management plan is about how I'm going to manage, execute, and control that aspect. This being the project management plan, it's going to discuss how I manage, execute, and control the whole project. So this is the basis for all the work you're going to do. This is your job to integrate it, right? And notice one of the inputs, of course, one of the inputs is the charter. That makes sense because we said as a rule of thumb, an output from a previous process often becomes an input to the next process. But look at the other input. It's called outputs from other processes. And what they're really saying there is the whole project plan isn't done all at one time. Scope will come in, then schedule, then cost, maybe, then quality. Who knows what order? It is your job to integrate them, to make sure you don't have more quality requirements than you have budget to account for, right? Or more risk than you have reserves from a costing perspective, okay? And then, of course, inputs, EEFs, and OPAs. Now, from a technology, tools and techniques, it's the same tools and techniques, but notice in data gathering, they just added checklists. And, of course, meetings would be important. Think about it. It's Develop Project Management Plan. That's the name of the process. So, I want to have a kickoff meeting when the plan is ready. It's one of the tools I'll use. It's a way of getting the good news out and demonstrating who's in charge, right? And so my one big output is the project management plan. This is the centralized document, right? And it can only be changed through the CCS. That means Change Control System. That's frankly process 4.6, Perform Integrated Change Control. And notice there's a predictive and an agile aspect to it, right? That you have management plans and methodologies in the predictive or waterfall project management. But in Agile, you'll list the project life cycle and then consider also the developmental approach. When I build my project management plan, it is here I determine what type of project I'm going to do, predictive or agile. It's important to the whole planning process. And so I'll list the life cycle and the developmental approach. Okay, we are going to take a short break and come back with baselines and the rest of the processes in integration management.